Romantic. It always warms the heart to see a nice young man settle down. The following frame fable features a Chad chieftain looking for love in the most unlikely of locales. It is my great pleasure to announce the advent of an Antipodian anthology. I call this Down Under Dreamtime Drama 1001 Pieces.
Long ago, in the faraway land of Alice Springs, there lived a king called Cunt. Cunt was king because he had the best bants and the best game in all the kingdom, and no other bloke could compete. Cunt was a jaded fella, however. In his sprog days, he had a bad run-in with a babysitter and an emu, so he had a bit of trouble not offing Sheilas during a route. But a skipper needs a Sheila, and King Cunt had burned through so many that there wasn't a slit left in Alice that wasn't some blindingly hideous bull. Bruce, Cunt's neighbour and owner of the town petrol station in Bottle, told King Cunt that on his last visit to the Dreamtime, the Rainbow Snake had commanded him to get a Sheila for Cunt, or the kingdom would be up shit creek. This was a dire situation, as there were no Sheilas left. Ancient pommy tales spoke of dressing young boarding school blokes in drag and rooting them, and that was dandy. But Rule 1 forbade such poof to shit when the first fleet landed in 1788. It may be dandy for pommy poo jabbers, but it was not fair dinkum for Aussie men. So the blokes of Alice had to look abroad. King Cunt sent his knights, the Alice Springs Footy Club, out in all directions to search for a Sheila to root. Many days and nights passed as Cunt waited on his loyal ruckman. One by one they returned from abroad. Each had brought many exotic kinds of Sheila, and filled the pub porch displaying their spoils to the town. There were chinks, poo and loos, nips, gooks, wogs, and much more. Unfortunately, no Sheila passed the test of all tests of Australianness, the pink nip test. After all had failed, the final ruckman turned up with the Sheila he caught, a Seppo. The Seppo Sheila passed the pink nip test, even though, just for her sake, the town's board of pink nips raised the bar several shades. The town was so indignant that a fucking Seppo be brought before the pub as a possible Sheila for King Cunt that a riot broke out, during which the Bottle caught fire, prompting a national emergency response to save the piss. King Cunt was not off his tree like his fellow cobs, however. Instead he was wearing his best shit-eating grin. Cunt would get to cuck the Seppos. Fucking oath, blow the nasty diseases he could catch from one of them. And so there was a quick ceremony in the pub, where Cunt and the Seppo were made bloke and Sheila, and all the townsfolk got to say their piece on a fucking Seppo being allowed in their midst. By the end of the ordeal, the Sheila was in tears, and they were far too salty to be joyous. Now came the root. The Sheila may have been a Seppo, but she at least knew that she was liable to be killed by a cunt driven to hysteria, recalling what the babysitter and emu did to him. So she came up with the bright idea, for a Seppo, of distracting him with some kind of pastime, so as to prolong her life on this Australian earth. She asked Cunt if he wanted to do something fun like play cards, or read the Constitution, or watch a Pastor John Hagee's sermon. Cunt didn't know what any of the fuck that was. The only fun games he knew were Two Up, Aussie Rules, and Gooner Fortune. He thought the Sheila would be too piss weak for Aussie Rules, and it was illegal to play Two Up outside of Anzac Day. So he said they would play Gooner Fortune, and he led her out to the backyard. In the yard, there stood the Hills hoist and a crate of goon sacks next to it, ever ready for a game. Cunt affixed the sacks to the lines and instructed the Sheila to sit down opposite him under the sacks. He then spun the Hills hoist. Around and round the goon sacks swung, the creaking of the Hills hoist sending Cunt into a dreamtime like days, muttering about bunyips and moon spirits. The Hills hoist came to a stop, and a sack was above both Cunt and the Sheila each. 2 mouthfuls for the rule in Alice, or as the locals say, 1 court sentencing. Both drank, and Kun spun the hills hoist again. Around and around the goon bags went. This continued on for a long time. After 4 hours and 87 standard drinks later, Cunt finally realised that the Sheila wasn't murmuring to the dreaming along with him. In fact, she didn't seem to be moving. For times like these, Alice had a small bush hospital outside of town, a fine patch of road next to a servo. The Sheila was laid on warm asphalt and revived with only the finest medical unleaded. The Sheila's brush with a boom's death all the more motivated her to stay alive. She knew King Cunt wouldn't go in for another game, so she would have to find some other way to distract him. That night, after being relentlessly mocked by the pub for almost dying from 2 schooners worth of goon during the game, the Sheila and King Cunt retired. Panicking, the Sheila frantically searched her mind for something she could grab King Cunt's attention with, and as they passed by Alice's big abo on the way back home, Rare Genius struck the slit. She was a Seppo, so why not distract Cunt with stories from abroad? Once home, as the two sat down for the evening billy tea and bickies, the Sheila asked King Cunt if he would like to hear a story from America. Cunt asked if it would be a true blue, good old ripper corker of a dinky-die yarn. Not knowing English, the Seppo Sheila merely smiled and nodded. Thus began the Sheila's 1001 Pisses.
Our girl Shayla sounds like a real keeper. I can't wait to hear what comes next.